Crisis Deepens, note-taking study guide, page 165. You could be in your textbooks on page 368 as well. You can go along with that as well. The question is how did the Lincoln-Douglas debates and the John Brown raids increase the tension between North and South? So we got more steps towards the Civil War. The first is the Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott was an enslaved person who sued for his freedom. The issue was that Dred Scott was actually taken into a free territory by his slave owner. So he thought, hey, I'm in a free territory, I can't be a slave here. So Supreme Court Chief Justice Roger B. Taney ruled that Scott had no right to sue in federal court because African Americans were not citizens, so he didn't have a right to sue. What this meant is that, and I said that slaves were property, and the property rights of their owners were protected in all states. So what this meant is that Congress did not have the power to prohibit slavery in any territory. The Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional. Even having no slaves in the North was unconstitutional. So supporters of slavery rejoiced at this ruling, but Northerners were shocked. Basically meaning that if you owned a slave in the South, you could move up to New York, where it was a free territory, and own slaves there as long as you purchased them in the South. It doesn't make sense. So this was a really horrible ruling, and I think one of the worst rulings in American history. I think all would agree now. So you have the American Lincoln-Stephen Douglas debates, and this occurred during the Illinois Senate race in the year 1858. Lincoln's opposition to the Kansas-Nebraska Act led him to run as against Republican Senator Stephen Douglas, the author of the Kansas-Nebraska Act in the first place. The goal of the new Republican Party was to stop the spread of slavery into Western territories. That was the goal. The goal wasn't even to end slavery, although that was the underlying goal. The stated goal was we need to stop the spread of slavery. So Douglas' stand on popular sovereignty: each state has a right to choose slavery if it pleases. Lincoln stands on African Americans, not socially or politically equal to rights. So that would be kind of a backward view of what we think today. But he thought that they were entitled to the rights in the Declaration of Independence. His stand on slavery, that it was morally wrong and that it would die on its own. Abraham Lincoln thought that eventually that slavery would cease to exist and would die out on its own. Okay, and can't be allowed in the West. He thought, hey, you know what, you can't have this throw slavery into the West. So Lincoln's position on the Union was that in favor of the Union, Lincoln stated that the country could not survive half slave, half free. So Lincoln understood that this half free, half slave Union was eventually going to have to resolve the issue of slavery. So it eventually have to be all slave or all free, and obviously Lincoln thought it should be all free. The next kind of event that led to the Civil War was John Brown's raid. It was a New English abolitionist driven out of Kansas for killing pro-slavery men there. Okay, his plan in 1859 was to seize guns at Harper Ferries, give them to slaves who would join him, and then in the revolt would eventually free all slaves. Unfortunately, Slade was worried because Brown had support in Northern abolitionists, and many of the North saw him as a hero. So the raid failed. He was captured. He was put to death, and the South, he thought the Southern slaves were going to join him, and that really didn't happen. So it kind of failed, but Northern abolitionists, hey, this person's a hero, and Southerners thought this person is crazy. He's going to destroy our way of life.